Joining me now to continue this discussion on the effort of this administration to curb insecurity is the former defense spokesman, retired Major General Chris Olukolade. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for the privilege.
And happy May 29 celebrations.
Yeah, I say happy May celebration to all Nigerians.
The conversation is on as to whether there is what to celebrate or not. Where do you stand?
Oh, definitely. The nation has many reasons to celebrate. The preservation of our sovereignty, the defense we enjoy by activities of our men, and the peace generally.
Indeed.
Although it could be better, but the one that we have now is relatively okay for us.
And who can understand the value of peace more than a soldier? So when you consider security and life, the security of life and property, is Nigeria safer today than it is or it was in the past year?
In the past year, yeah, we can say incrementally. What do I mean by incremental? Building on the previous successes. Nigerians definitely have better reasons to have great hope concerning safety and security generally. There are prospects, not just for the achievement of the operatives, the services in the field, but for the fact that the atmosphere gives more reason for better performance, and the disposition of the services indicates that we have great hopes for a more secure nation.
What's your assessment of this government's effort at tackling insecurity? We've seen when Mr. President came up, there was a change in the heads of security agencies and chiefs. We've witnessed increased funding, the deployment of technology and what have you. How impactful would you say this government effort has been in the past year?
Well, one thing that is obvious is that the services, the security agencies seem to have better understanding from the leadership. Okay. And that itself could mean a lot of morale, particularly for the leadership of the services. The fact that you have a commander-in-chief who you can assess, who understands the nuances of modern warfare, modern security management, and you can easily explain and get his understanding. That's what we assume is affecting their performance positively. If you see the reports in relation to the number of terrorists that have been neutralized here and there, a statistics I saw recently was talking of over 9,000 of such cases. Several have been rescued. I mean, those who were hostages. A number of efforts were also securing our economic assets, for instance. The oil theft has been tackled substantially, and I think there's some better effect on the morale of both the leadership and the operatives of the services, and it's telling off on their operations.
So when you look at this data, courtesy of Beacon Intelligence, it's a private security company in Nigeria, it says we've had 5,461 cases of abduction and 9,858 fatalities in the past year. Does it fit well into how well you think they performed, or you think this is saying something differently?
Relative to the situation they came into, one would say it's a commendable performance in the sense that the situation was really, really bad. And to reverse it to the extent that we have now indicates a lot of effort. And it's good that we appreciate those efforts. Otherwise, we underrate the level of, effort that has gone into securing the nation this month. Yes, those statistics look very damning, but with the privilege of interaction and understanding of the challenges of managing a bad situation, I think the armed forces and the nation has performed relatively well. And like I said earlier, a lot of prospects for improved performance.
Banditry, abduction, and kidnapping possibly rank highest in the security challenges this administration is faced with. And Mr. President has said there's no ransom payment. What's your take on that? Because at some point, it was a big issue even here at the federal capital.
Yeah, starting from the issue of ransom payment. It's a good policy, I mean, as a way of policy. We wish that we'll get to a point that we don't even have such challenges at all. For the fact that much as the system has declared no ransom payment, most people in town have found it that anyone who is kidnapped is at the mercy of how far his family can go. And many times this is what prompts them to break this rule of no ransom. Because they need more assurance that something is being done to recover their kings who are in captivity. So for that reason, we think the more successes we have in the field, the more courage people will have in that policy. And I think that's the next desire now, to have the level of impact in the field that can make people have confidence that, yes, with or without paying ransom, they will still have their people back.
As we speak right now, what's that confidence level, in your opinion? For an average Nigerian whose loved one is kidnapped, you think they agree completely with Mr. President's no ransom payment stance?
No, it's obvious not everybody agree. Like I said earlier, based on their experience, the experience of, they need assurance. They want to be assured that, okay, if I don't pay ransom, will my person be back? And quite often, the terrorists will negotiate with the families of the abducted, and it looks as if they are on their own, nobody to intervene. So for the much that government can assure people by results in the field, that sooner or later anyone who is adopted will be back.
Absolutely.
And that the incident itself will not go without being reversed. I think that's the assurance that we need to let people know that this policy means much to the nation.
So two words that we've heard more than often in the past years, kinetic and non-kinetic approach. Some states have even gone as far as negotiating with these criminals as what they consider a more sustainable way of approaching this challenge. I don't know if that has necessarily completely resolved the challenge, but do you think, where do you stand between kinetic and non-kinetic?
The two really has to...
In the area of kidnappings and banditry.
Yeah. I think the two should go together. However, the military should just face the kinetic dimensions. I heard you say earlier, quoting Mr. President, that the whole of society approach is where we can have the effect of the non-kinetic dimension. Quite often, leave the military, let them sort it out with the terrorists. And by the way, I think we should, manage our language in describing these people. Quite often, the people you call bandits are actually terrorists. And there's no need to segregate between the two. Let the nation know that we are dealing with terrorism in a very terrible state.
Absolutely.
And to give the impression that bandits are a better format than any other terrorist is not correct. So quite often, the more we know that we are dealing with a very terrible situation, the more the whole society gets involved in terms of providing.
And that's the point I was trying to make, because the perception right now with many of the non-kinetic approaches is it gets to a point where some people begin to feel that if you kill more people, then you stand a chance to be negotiated with. You look at the civil cases amongst those. If you shoot at a person, you are going to have your day in court. If you steal, you will have your day in court. If you do all these smaller crimes, nobody just pats you on the back and say what you need is rehabilitation. You have to go to the correctional center. So what vibe do you think this non-kinetic approach is giving? And what impact do you think it's having on our society from that angle? I'm
not seeing the non-kinetic angle as an excuse for criminals to get away with their crime. If they survive the trouble in the field, but if they survive to be alive, they should face the law.
Indeed.
And I don't think non-kinetic means anybody should get away with crime. And that impression should not even be created out there. Yes, if you surrender, it only gives you opportunity to face the law and maybe sort out yourself. Like one of these people speaking on war said, it is not the business of soldiers to play with terrorists. It's to send them for judgment before God. And that means their being alive is at the mercy of anyone who gets them back. So we should not overplay that non-kinetic dimension. And like I said, indeed, the military, the security agencies should just face their own work. And if there's non-kinetic, let it be done by
the politicians.
They are the ones who should be doing that discussion. Those in the field should step up operations and get rid of this thing as quickly as they can.
When Mr. President assumed office last year, he emphasized the need for collaboration amongst forces and security agencies. We didn't see much of that in the last administration. At some critical points, we were getting, divisive, some form of division amongst them. Do you think we have fared better in that regard in the past 1 year?
I think we have fared better for the fact that almost at the beginning of the administration, an incident came up in Lagos, if you remember, between the EFCC and the police.
Indeed.
The position of the government was very clear. We will not take this rancor within the security system. I think that message sank. At the inauguration of the service chiefs, the president emphasized that, warning them that he would not take non-collaboration among the services.
Indeed.
To a large extent, that is working. It's working at least among the leadership. Occasional instances of deviation are there, but I think the situation is better. For instance, I looked at the situation in Banex last week. I think the police did something professional from the accounts I've read about that. Otherwise, it might have escalated. The professional management of that situation without engaging either the fellow service people or even the people who committed the crime. That's one indication of, I think if everybody do their work with great level of professionalism, it is embedded in training that we must collaborate.
Indeed.
So deviation from those ideals could lead to people wanting to go it alone.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that collaboration is needed, like you said, if we're going to win this onslaught. So let's talk about, we've been spending a lot on security when you look at the budget appropriation over the years, and modernizing, equipping armed forces has been given premium under this administration. Does more money necessarily translate into better security? And I want you to answer that based on what has happened in the past 1 year.
I think that's a very good question. Does more money indicate better security? Everybody will agree that security is costly.
Indeed.
If you look at what is involved in managing both the routine and the special operations, you definitely cannot downplay the importance of money into the system. For instance, by the time you move an aircraft on a patrol between one point and the other, I did this analysis in an interview previously. That was years ago, and I said, for instance, to move an aircraft from one spot to the other, even if it's just a short distance, you're not talking of anything less. The fuel alone is nothing less than hundreds of thousands of naira, and I imagine what it is now. So all those ones involve costs, which may not be visible. And some of these ones are expendables. The fuel they burn in the field, of course it is said that, soldiers fight on their stomach, and all of these definitely involve costs. So we can, on that basis, we can't rule out the fact that more money gives guarantee for better security, but more of training rather, and a lot of, expenditure should go both into training, equipping, and the welfare of the men. By the time you put all of this together, definitely it means more money. And all we just need is to have the understanding and the leadership that can channel this money in the right place.
It's one thing to get more equipment and technology.
Yeah.
You also have to encourage the men who will use them.
Who will use them.
Because that motivation is key.
Who will even manage them. I mean, manage both the application in terms of the training, the morale of the men. So you definitely cannot rule out the place of money, but not without management. I think one of the body language people must be getting from this administration is the fact that you will account somehow.
Indeed.
And that consciousness needs to go into the system. Yes, someday you will account, and that means don't be wasteful. Yeah.
Because we're going to ask you in a matter of time how you spend
That's it.
how you spend the money. Over the years, we have covered stories of the Nigerian military reaching out to their host communities. And personally, I think it's a laudable idea, to familiarize themselves and let them know that there's a human face behind the business of security. But we've seen that civil-military relation also deteriorate in the past year when you consider what happened in Delta State, resulting in the death of some servicemen. You talked about what happened in Banex Plaza. You seem to think that was well handled and what have you. But what do you think can be done to improve on this? Because why would anybody attack a man in uniform? I mean, that means that the relationship has really broken down and perhaps we're not paying attention to it.
Yeah, it could be part of the wrong values in the system that could make people want to engage people who work for the state. And if we are to refer to the case of Okwama, for instance, I have illustrated, I think in this station or somewhere, that most of what gave reason for that was ritualist tendencies. It was the brutality meted to those soldiers was not a matter of vengeance or whatever. There was more to it. There's cultism, there is ritualism, there is the belief that you can get away with anything. And that those are indications of terrible values in society. And the earlier we collectively resist it, the better. And I think the people in Okwama who got into that should never get away with that tendency. And whatever the state will do to reverse it will be a good message to those who have bastardized our values that far. And I think that those are the things affecting, that has its own bad effect on civil-military relations. Yeah, civil-military relations is part of the virtues and values of military operations. And the Nigerian military, to the best of my knowledge, have emphasized that much lately. And it's even involving some of their resources that is meant for their own welfare, is extended to catering to their immediate community.
Yes.
Not just the community where their bases are put, but bases where they have operations. Of course, that will only be to the limit of the resources they have. The essence is to have a more collaborative relationship with civilians. I don't think the situation was that bad, and I wish it doesn't degenerate. I've always referred to an instance of the idea of the civilian joint task force in Borno. At the beginning of the operations in Borno, the tendency was for the populace to be hailing the terrorists, even when they are attacking soldiers. But the situation got reversed to the point that the civilians formed a civilian joint task force whose main purpose was to support the military in the field. I think that was a good reversal. Indeed. Or, a great contrast of how far the military has gone to win the hearts and minds of the people. I know that a lot is being done in terms of investing. Do
you think there are other stakeholders? Because you've talked about what the military is doing.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of, taking care of the welfare, even though they still need to do more in the area of professionalism and how the men actually interact with the community. But are there other critical stakeholders who perhaps may have a role to play in this? Consider education. What does the average Nigerian knows about the work of the Nigerian military and how much patriotism? What can we do more to fuel that patriotism that can support them?
Well, quite often is by being I'll begin with the news channel. The messages you sent out about the military creates some perception in public about what the military is about. If we let the people know that this work is essentially sacrificial, and anyone who sacrifices for us should have some appreciation. The military is doing a lot to civilianize its relationship, realizing that it needs that to win the hearts and minds of people. I think the public should reciprocate in the sense that mere courtesies, mere acknowledgement at every opportunity. You see the American society, for instance, let me refer to that. The degree of honor and acknowledgement and respect given to the military and service people is encouraging. You enter an aircraft, for instance, you know the level of courtesy you'll be accorded. You'll be recognized no matter your rank. That's one. Even if you're a veteran, that a veteran is in a location, he gets some acknowledgement and endorsement. I think with a lot of perception management on our part, from the media and the society, things will improve.
Some have also blamed it on too much engagement of the military in civil affairs, civil interventions. In America, where you talked about, you don't see, soldiers defend the sovereignty, the territorial sovereignty of the nation, and then to bring them into civil affairs, it's not often, but we see that more than often here.
Yeah,
Do you think there's something
you don't blame it all? Don't blame it all on the military. You know why? Most people complain when they are victims. Others encourage it. We know people who can say, this matter can only be solved if we get soldiers into it. If they help us to, that is if they are the ones that are the receiving end. But when it is otherwise, when they are the ones that are victims, they complain. I wish that the society will stop getting the military into land issues, stop calling soldiers to come and help you resolve land issues, to come and help you fight your neighbor.
But can the military decide not to also intervene in matters like that?
It doesn't have to. The training within the military is don't dabble in civil affairs, civil matters. It's even an offense for you to get involved. A well-trained soldier knows, for instance, he shouldn't be a debt collector. He knows. A well-trained soldier knows that he shouldn't go helping somebody to fight his neighbor. But the pressure, the demand from families, friends who feel you can't be there and I'm suffering. They say only soldiers can solve this. They say if I get a soldier that will get my land back. All those kind of tendencies also compound.
Well, my concern is that the reason why they would make that request is because it is possible to engage their services. You can't ask for something that is practically impossible by function of the structures and systems around.
Yeah, they believe so. But if I was talking of a well-trained soldier, no matter the pressure, he will not submit to that. He knows that he has limitations, that the uniform is not all in all, and there are places he shouldn't dabble into at the risk of his career. So the tendency is both ways. I was also going to say something about how we can, encourage civil military relations. In terms of cooperation, the military needs partnership in certain instances. For instance, we want to add road to a place. There's nothing wrong in a company that has the resources to support that venture, and there'd be a partnership between the military and that company or that organization. The tendency to also support the military, both with campaigns. I remember there was a group that used to encourage us those days. They called Support Our Group Troops Movement. I don't know if it still exists. Those ones do advocacy from time to time to wake up consciousness on the value of military service in a nation.
Unfortunately, we talked about civil interventions earlier. It is these things that paint the military in bad light, because normally I think the soldier is trained to, use force to fight the enemies of a nation. Then when you bring them to civil, for civil situations like that, it paints them in bad light for society to see. But I want us to talk about what you consider the standard practice when the military is under attack by civilians. Because we saw what happened in Okoma. And, the Banex Plaza experience you talked about. When you see the comment, I see comments like people say, if I was here, I want to open the shop tomorrow. The expectation is that the moment you launch an attack against the Nigerian military, it is standard protocol that there will be retaliatory attacks. How does that fit into the reality of the military? How are they supposed to manage it? And what do you consider the current situation?
I think there's a lot of restraint lately in the military, and this is attributable to training. Otherwise, some of the actions that many civilians do against the military is really unwarranted. But like I said, by virtue of training, there have been a lot of restraint lately. So you are not hearing so much vandalization and retaliation. And there's an assumption that there will always be a retaliatory move. If the law takes its course in good time, there will be no need for anybody to think of retaliation. Like I said, also, I think there's a lot of restraint which the leadership of the services will continue to encourage. If not, there will have been many incidents in response. Look at what's going on in Banex, for instance. Why is it taking so long to fish out the criminals? Why is it a big deal? Fish out the people who brutalized the soldier, and it's taking weeks. The same with Okoma. There's definitely people who know about this are hiding them, and they believe that nothing will happen. That could be very, very painful. And sometimes this prompts the tendencies people believe come. But like I said, a lot of restraint is keeping that tendency low.
But what is the standard practice when soldiers are under attack by civilians? How are they trained to react?
Well, the normal instinct of a soldier is to respond to anything that proves to be an enemy. So but like I say, a lot of restraint is curtailing that. The expectation is that the society will, through its processes, bring those deviants to law. For instance, if the people in Banex Plaza have been arrested and they are they are already being prosecuted, nobody will feel cheated. So the standard practice is to watch out for the law to take its course.
We have to go now, but I want you to quickly react to some of the online videos we've seen. By the way, Mr. President was at the interment service for the soldiers and officers that were killed in Okoma.
Yes.
And I think many people appreciated that he was there. He also talked about giving scholarship to the children, both born and unborn, and giving them some awards as well. All right. But I want you to speak to some of the videos we've seen online of soldiers undermining civilian authorities, speak against governors. I mean, it has become rampant these days.
Well, those are indications of indiscipline, but I'm also aware that the system have responded in a number of issues to say that, one, this is not the position of the system. Any soldier found in that who is traceable will definitely be punished, and I have seen a lot of them being punished accordingly. So it must make it clear to us that the system does not endorse it.
Okay.
And that's what everybody needs to be convinced about. Once it could be proved, they will definitely be punished.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining this conversation. And I see that you're quite optimistic that things are getting better.
Definitely.
Retired Major General of the Nigerian Army, former Director of Defense Information. Is that accurate?
Correct.
General Chris Olukolade, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you for the privilege, and I wish you happy celebrations.
Wish you the same too.